because the formerly enslaved could take their shackles and they could sell it for iron. This is Nashville, we're in Nashville. And they could sell it for iron and they could make their tuition, they could help. And of course the missionaries were helping, So this was a good thing. The Depression hit and nobody had any money. And a woman named Ella Shepherd, we need to have actually a statue of Miss Shepherd at Fisk University. Ella Shepherd went to President Erasmus and said to him, how can we help? We're students, how can we help? Ella and her friends every Friday night had been playing, they would go to the music building, and Ella could play the piano. Her mother taught her to play the piano. And they would sing what was then called the cabin songs. That is going to emerge into the Negro spirituals, but they were the cabin songs, the grandmother songs that they used to sing. And they would sing that, as a part of their thing. And so Mr. Erasmus said to her, I don't know what you can do, he didn't say you just colored kids, but that's what it amounted to. And she said, well, we can sing. And he was like, ma'am, you know how authoritative white men are with poor black people. So no disrespect intended. But he didn't have any interest. He had no cotton to that. So she decided that's what they were going to do, so they were going to go to Murfreesboro. It's a really wonderful white man, and he was a nice man. And there are, but his name was George White. And Mr. White was the music director at Fisk at that particular time. And he said to Ella Shepherd and her group, I understand what you're thinking that you're doing, but you ought to sing the songs of the day. And the songs of the day is, the Gilbert and Sullivan songs. So they were, on His Majesty's ship or whatever it was. And so he taught them and had them singing these little dumb songs. So they get to Murfreesboro, well, they are. And you get to Murfreesboro, and they were singing these songs. They're not making any money, because who wants to hear, 7 colored kids sing, on His Majesty's ship or whatever that crap was. And they turned to go north, of course, they're walking, these are serious times, people don't have any. So they're not quite making enough to feed themselves, but they start to head north. And it's going to be important, because as you're going through Kentucky, you're stopping at the churches, and we know black churches, you do. So you know that they're helping they're seeing the kids, they understand the mission, they're doing what they can, but there is really still no particular money. And the sad thing is that they're trying to get to someplace like Cincinnati, which will be a more conducive to what they're trying to do. Well, when they finally get near Cincinnati, actually, in Wilberforce, what happened, they did make money, but that was the day, if you recall, and some of us are Fiskites in this room, that was the day of the Great Chicago Fire. And there are a lot of things wrong with black people, and we talk about that a lot. But what we don't ever try to remember is the greatness of us. Those kids who had been hungry and cold at the day of their best financial day, the Chicago Fire touched them, and they wanted to help. A lot of people wouldn't have done anything. A lot of people said, I'm sorry. But those kids said, let's take enough for us to eat, which they did. And they sent the rest to Chicago to help the people with the Chicago Fire. These are great people. I know sometimes people get mad at black people. I don't know what's wrong, but we have to look at who we are and what we've done. These are great people. They did that. No matter how poor we were, we had something to give. And we have to honor that. Because they're going to do better and better. And they're finally going to get to, not Wilberforce, another place. Oberlin, they got to Oberlin. Ella knew them, though they were doing all right. They were not making money. They were not doing enough to send back. Ella said to the group, we're actually going down, because if they go much further north, they're going to have codes, and a lot of things are going to have to happen. So she said to the group, we're going down. You can see that. That's realism. She said, if we have to go down, we're not going to go down on Gilbert and Sullivan. We're going to go down on the songs that got us over. We're going to go down on the songs that we sang. So they walked into the church in Oberlin College. They walked into this big, and I don't have to tell you, 7 black kids walking into, the ministers were there. One of the people in the audience was Reverend Beecher, who was Harriet Beecher Stowe's brother. And the kids walked into the middle. And when they did, all eyes, of course, were going to turn to them. And when they had the attention, people were looking, they broke into, as we know, 4-part harmony on Steal Away, Steal Away, Steal Away to Jesus. And everybody, the ministers knew that they were doing something wonderful. Reverend Beecher said to them, if you come to New York, actually, if you come to Brooklyn, when Brooklyn was its own city, if you come to Brooklyn, my church will help take care of it. You know, you will make a lot of money. So they did very well there. They made it up and they came on across. And of course, you know, the old way, actually, they followed the trail of the Harlem Renaissance because they'd come through Pittsburgh and they'd come all the way over. And they got to Reverend Beecher's church. And of course, he welcomed them, and they were now doing way better. They sang at his church, and one of the people in his church, one of the young men, came up and said to the Jubilee singers, to Ella, "My cousin should hear you. You should come to England and let my cousin hear you." He was the Marquis de Huntington, and his cousin, of course, was Queen Victoria. And they went to England. Now, these were two of the Jubilee singers, as you know, were not only enslaved, but had been whipped. And so they had bullwhip. They had marks on their back. Ella was the free daughter of a slave woman. We had people who they tell us, and that's why I have no truck with people that say black people can't function anyplace. We have people that are coming from slavery who are now going to have to interact with hereditary royalty. They're going to have to chit-chat with hereditary royalty. They're going to have to find a way to hold themselves together, to eat their bacon. They did everything right. And in the evening, they performed the concerts. As we know, we at FISC erroneously say Queen Victoria gave them $50,000, and it was not gift, and nor was it dollars. They earned 50,000 pounds because they definitely did sing for their supper. And Queen Victoria, as you know, if you've been at FISC, had the Jubilee singers painted. We know that, and that's where that painting comes from. But she said to them, and this is what I wanted to share with Memphis today. Queen Victoria said to them, "Where did you come from?" And they said, "Nashville, ma'am." And she said, "Ed, that must be a musical city." And that's how Nashville became Music City. And a lot of